At the base of a towering mountain in northern India, there was a humble village surrounded by sprawling green fields and age-old trees. Life here moved slowly, like the river that trickled nearby. Steady, quiet, and predictable. In a small clay house on the outskirts of this village lived a poor man named Arman, his wife Meena, and their 2 children. Arman was a woodcutter by trade, not because he had inherited it, but because life had left him no other choice. Each morning, he would pick up his rusted axe, sling a cloth bag over his shoulder, and trek up the rugged trail toward the forest. The climb was long and steep, but it had become as natural to him as breathing. He knew every rock, every bend in the path, and even every bird song that filled the morning air. But what set Arman apart wasn't his knowledge of the land. It was his heart. Every day, after he'd gathered his wood and rested near an outcrop halfway up the mountain, he'd approach a peculiar figure at the edge of the forest. It was a massive lion statue, carved from stone and half buried in moss and soil. No one knew who had carved it or why it stood there. Most villagers passed it by without a glance. Some believed it to be sacred. Others thought it cursed. But Arman? He treated it like an old friend. Each day, he would take out a small cloth pouch from his bag, kneel before the lion, and gently place a pinch of barley meal mixed with a dab of butter into its stone mouth. Then he would smile and whisper, "Please eat this, brother lion. I know you don't have anyone to care for you." It wasn't much. Arman himself barely had enough to feed his own children. But what little he had, he shared. When the seasons changed and the forest grew colder, he still brought his offering. Even when his fingers were cracked from winter frost or his back ached from the burden of wood, he never missed a day. To Arman, kindness was not conditional. It was his nature. The rock speaks. One particular day, as the air turned golden and the leaves began to shed their summer green, something extraordinary happened. Arman had just placed the barley into the lion's mouth and stood up to brush off the dust from his knees when, "Thank you, friend," a deep, gravelly voice rumbled. Arman stumbled back, nearly dropping his axe. The sound came from the lion. Its mouth had not moved, but the voice had clearly come from it. Arman's heart pounded. His legs froze. Sweat broke across his brow. Was he imagining things? "Brother Lion?" he asked softly, his voice quivering. "Did you speak?" "You are a good man," said the lion. "Every day you feed me with what little you have. You expect nothing in return. That is rare in this world." Arman could barely breathe. The lion continued, "I have watched you for many years. You give, even when you have little. Come here tomorrow before the sun rises, and I will give you something in return." Still stunned, Arman nodded and stumbled back down the mountain, forgetting even to gather firewood. That night, he barely slept. His wife Meena noticed his restlessness and asked if he was unwell. I think the lion statue spoke to me," he whispered, unsure of how to explain. Meena, used to her husband's gentle soul and quiet musings, simply said, "If it did, maybe it's a blessing." And so, before the first light of dawn, Arman tied his turban, packed his usual pouch, and made his way back to the lion. The treasure within. The morning fog hung low as Arman reached the lion. The stone looked the same as ever, silent and majestic. But as he approached, the lion spoke again. "Inside my belly is gold," it said calmly. "Place your hand inside my mouth and take what you can. But remember this, you must pull your hand out before the sun rises. When the first light touches my body, my mouth will close. Forever." Arman hesitated. Then, with reverence, he stepped forward. The lion's mouth slowly opened. A faint glow shimmered within. Arman reached in and felt the cool, metallic touch of gold coins. Carefully, he filled his small pouch. enough to feed his family for a long time, but not more than he needed. As he turned to leave, he bowed. "Thank you, Brother Lion. This is enough. I won't forget your kindness." And with that, he walked down the mountain, the first rays of sun glancing off the peaks behind him. Riches and rumors Armin used the gold wisely. He paid off his debts, repaired his home, bought new shoes for his children and warm blankets for Mina. But he told no one of the lion. Except, one day his neighbor asked, "Armin, you seem different, happier. Has something changed?" The neighbor was a wealthy man named Jagan, who lived in a grand house with a tiled roof and servants. He was known in the village not for his kindness, but for his greed. Armin, innocent and honest, told him the truth. He should have known better. The next morning, Jagan disguised himself in old clothes and made the trek to the lion. He brought not a small pouch, but a massive sack. He mimicked Armin's offering for a few days, impatiently waiting for the lion to speak. Finally, the lion did. "You may take gold from me, but remember, leave before the sun rises." Jagan grinned. He returned the next day before dawn and shoved his entire arm into the lion's mouth, greedily scooping gold into his giant sack. He didn't watch the sky. He didn't listen to the wind. He didn't even pause to think. All he saw was gold. Until... snap! The lion's jaws clamped shut, and Jagan's cries echoed down the mountain. Jagan screamed in agony as the stone lion's mouth closed down upon his arm. The early light of dawn filtered through the trees, turning the misty forest into a glowing sea of gold. But his pain drowned out the beauty around him. Birds scattered from the trees, startled by the desperate howls. Blood trickled down his side as he tugged and pulled, his body convulsing from the pain. The more he struggled, the tighter the lion's grip seemed to become. Down in the village, some farmers preparing their carts for the morning market heard the cries echoing from the mountains. They looked at one another, puzzled. "Who could be up there at this hour?" one asked. Meanwhile, Jagan had collapsed to the ground, shivering from blood loss and despair. His once strong and proud face now wore an expression of pure fear and helplessness. "Please," he whispered to the lion, "please let me go." But the lion remained still, cold, silent. For hours he lay there, until Armin, returning up the mountain with his wood-cutting tools, stumbled across the horrifying scene. "Jagan!" he cried, rushing forward. Jagan looked up, his eyes sunken with exhaustion. "Help me, please, get me out," he muttered. Armin took off his shawl and knelt beside him. "What happened?" "The lion. It bit me. I stayed too long. I wanted more," Jagan sobbed. Armin looked at the sack, overflowing with gold coins, far more than any one man could need in a lifetime. "You didn't listen to the warning," Armin said softly. "You forgot the sun rises for all of us, not just for you." He tried to pull Jagan free, but it was no use. The lion's mouth had locked shut. It was as if the rock itself had returned to lifelessness. Jagan's fate was sealed. He fainted soon after. Armin built a small shelter beside him and ran back to the village for help. But by the time others arrived, Jagan had already passed. His hand was still buried in gold, and so the tale spread like wildfire through the village. The stone lion was sacred, they said, a guardian, a test, a giver of fortune, but also a taker of greed. Armin never returned to take more gold. He continued his life humbly, with gratitude in his heart and wisdom in his eyes. And every time someone asked him what happened, he would only say, "Take only what you need. The mountain gives to the honest, but swallows the greedy." Years passed, and the story of the honest man and the stone lion became legend. Yet as time moved on, and generations shifted, fewer people visited the lion. Fewer children listened to the story under the banyan tree. And though the village remained peaceful, comfort began to dull its wisdom. One day, a traveler arrived, young, confident, dressed in fine robes and gold jewelry. He claimed to be a scholar from a faraway city, seeking knowledge and fortune. The villagers welcomed him, offered him food, and told him tales of the stone lion. But the traveler laughed. "You mean to tell me a statue spoke and gave gold? You country folk believe in fairy tales." The honest man, now older with silver in his hair, replied gently, "It is not the gold that matters. It is the story that shapes us." "Then let me see it for myself," the traveler challenged. At sunrise, a small group, including the old man and the monk, guided the traveler up the path to the lion. The forest was still, as if holding its breath. When they reached the lion, the traveler walked around it, inspecting it with skepticism. "It's just a rock," he said. Then, with arrogance, he shouted, "Oh, mighty lion, if you truly have gold, give it to me. I am clever and strong, more deserving than the fools before me." Silence. The wind whispered through the trees. A bird called in the distance. But the lion did not respond. The traveler scoffed. "See, just a tale. I'll return to my city with nothing but dust on my boots." He turned to leave, but the monk called after him. "What did you bring with you?" "What do you mean?" "You came to ask, but you offered nothing. Not kindness, not patience, not respect. The lion has already given you his answer." The traveler, now humbled by the moment, looked at the villagers, none of whom had gold, yet all seemed rich in something he couldn't name. He bowed slightly and walked down the mountain, deep in thought. The lion remained silent. But in that silence, another lesson had been given. Time, like the river beyond the forest, flowed on. The honest man grew older, but his heart remained light. He never grew rich by gold again, yet he was never poor in peace. The villagers continued to come to him for stories, for wisdom, for calm presence. One misty morning, as the sky was still painted with the gentle pink of dawn, he took a slow walk up the mountain path alone. He hadn't visited the stone lion in many months. His steps were slower now, but steady. Age had weathered his face, but not his spirit. When he arrived, the forest welcomed him in stillness. The lion, as always, stood silent. The honest man sat cross-legged in front of it. He brought no offerings that day, only his thoughts. He whispered, "Brother Lion, I have no barley, no butter, just a heart that's full. I have come not to ask, but to thank you." A breeze rustled through the leaves above. "I once fed you because I had little and knew what hunger felt like. You gave me gold, but it was never the treasure. It was the lesson. I gave it away long ago, but your lesson stayed." He paused, then smiled faintly. "My neighbor learned too. He changed. We all did. But the world forgets quickly. Maybe one day someone will need your voice again." As he closed his eyes and bowed, a faint warmth spread across his chest. He felt not alone. The lion, silent still, watched with stone eyes. But when the man rose to leave, he noticed something. Where he had placed his hands during prayer, moss had grown in the shape of an open palm. The forest had accepted his thanks. And that was enough. Many years later, after the honest man passed away peacefully in his sleep, the village gathered for a simple ceremony. No golden statues, no monuments, just a wooden plaque under the banyan tree with words carved by the children who had grown up with his stories. True wealth is not measured in gold, but in the kindness we leave behind. The stone lion still stands, silent, still. Some say it has never spoken since, but every few years, a weary traveler arrives, broken, confused, seeking something they cannot name. They sit before the lion, perhaps expecting treasure. They leave with something else, a thought, a pause, a shift in the heart. And that is the lion's voice, no longer needing words. Moral of the story: greed is a hunger that can never be satisfied. But gratitude, compassion, and humility, these are the treasures that never fade. If you live honestly, help others without expecting reward, and accept enough as enough, the universe opens in quiet, powerful ways. And remember, those who seek gold may find stones, but those who seek wisdom often find gold in silence.